you can't solve these problems with just your habits. This is not a problem about you having bad email habits. It's a problem of the underlying way that we have implicitly agreed to collaborate. The hive mind necessitates constant email checking. Any type of habit or norm or expectation that gets you away from constant email checking will make you worse at your job and hurt your organization if the hive mind is how you organize.
Who are the world's most interesting people? And what fascinating, groundbreaking, incredible things can they teach us? In this new series, I leave our Science of People lab to interview my favorite authors, experts, and celebrities for them to share their best people hacks, social skills, and stories. And let me tell you, they have some juicy tips. This is a new series I'm calling The World's Most Interesting People. Hello, YouTube friends. Today, we are going to be talking about a world without email with one of my favorite authors. I'm so excited to introduce you to him. If you don't know him already, Cal Newport is a computer science professor at Georgetown University and also a New York Times bestselling author of 7 books, including Digital Minimalism, which I loved, and Deep Work, and now dun, 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 A World Without Email. His books have been published in over 35 languages. He's also a regular contributor to The New Yorker, The New York Times, Wired, and the host of the popular Deep Questions podcast. Welcome, Cal.
Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for having me on.
So we've known about each other. So for folks watching, Captivate is with the same publisher and even the same editor as Cal's books. And so our work has always been side by side, but now I'm bringing it to you. And I wanted to just start off with, this is a huge claim. What inspired you to write this book? Was there a moment, a story, a spark?
Well, Deep Work, that book in 2016, immediately led to this book. So I actually started writing A World Without Email in 2016. And some of the early interviews that show up in A World Without Email are from 2016. I actually put it on pause, wrote Digital Minimalism because that felt very, very timely.
Yeah.
And then went back to finish A World Without Email. And the reason why it followed Deep Work is that I wrote that book, Deep Work. It was sort of an ode to the magic of concentration. And we shouldn't underestimate the value of just giving things sustained thought. And the feedback was so clear. Cal, you do not realize like how impossible it is to do it. Like our work makes it impossible because of how often we have to check email, how often we have to check Slack, how often we have to check Teams, makes it impossible to have any time to do unbroken concentration. I got really interested. Like, well, why do we work this way? If it is so inefficient, if it makes us so ill-suited to create value with our brain, why do we decide to work this way? And I just started pulling on that thread. And it took me 5 years to unravel the whole thing. And the story that I uncovered was epic. And that is what eventually made it into this new book.
So one of my favorite things you just said, one of my favorite quotes in the book. So by the way, I love this book so much. The line that really got me is the question, why is it so hard to do my work? And that's, I think, something that we're not realizing, that we're actually fighting, we're working to do our work. And we're competing against all these forces. And I was wondering if you could introduce to the audience, what is the hyperactive hive mind? What is that concept? How does that work? It absolutely solidified why this is so hard.
Well, the hyperactive hive mind is really the villain of the book. And it's the thing that the whole book is about. The only reason why it's not in the title is because it's not exactly a pithy phrase. But so here's the story, right? So you look at the history of email. I went back and really researched email emerging in the world of work. And here's what you see. In the early 1990s, email spreads widely and fast through offices for a very good reason. It was cheaper, more efficient, and more powerful than fax machines, voicemail, and memos, all of which played a big role in office communication. Email did those much better. So it spread very fast for that reason. It's a very rational reason for email to spread. It's why we're glad email exists. It's better than fax machines. In its wake, so as it spread for this very pragmatic reason, in its wake emerged a new way of collaborating. We said, oh, now that we have low friction digital communication, really the easiest, most convenient thing we could do to collaborate is why don't we just work things out with back and forth unscheduled ad hoc messages? What about this? Thoughts, you get that client call. Where are we going on here? When was that event going to happen again? We'll just do this back and forth. The problem is this new way of communicating, which I call the hyperactive hive mind, it's supplanted. It got into the place of all the other different ways we used to get together and organize and collaborate, and it didn't scale Because when you have dozens of different people you work with and dozens of different clients and dozens of different vendors that you're all communicating with this way, and you have multiple back and forth asynchronous unscheduled conversations with each of these different people, the total amount of messages coming into these communication tools becomes enormous. And it's not just the count of messages, it is the urgency with which they have to be responded to. Because if this is how we're working things out, I can't wait a long amount of time to see the latest message and send it back. Because if it's going to take 7 messages for us to make a decision on something, and I wait 6 hours before every response, that's going to take too long to make a decision. So once we're using the hive mind, we became obligated to have to check in on email, to check in on Slack, check in on Teams all the time. This is not addictive behavior. It's not irrational behavior. It's not us being bad with our tools. It is necessitated by this workflow. It's why we can't get away from checking these inboxes all the time with our own personal habits. So why is this a problem? Well, checking an inbox all the time is a cognitive catastrophe. Our brain is not a computer processor. We cannot just execute things agnostic to what they are, one after another. It takes a lot of time for us to switch our attention from one target to another. So when we started checking our inbox once every 6 minutes, we put our brain into a perpetual state of semi-completed context shifts, and then we abort and go back here, then abort to go back here. And it makes us much, much less able to think clearly. It gives us serious cognitive fatigue, and it causes anxiety. So the hyperactive hive mind is productivity poison and is email enabled the hive mind to grow. But there is nothing fundamental about email as a tool that says we have to use the hive mind. Killing off that way of work is my whole mission.
Yes, and I am here to help you spread that mission. And there was something really important that you addressed for me, which is everyone always says, oh, I should work to batch my emails, right? Everyone always says, if I just batch my emails, it's better. And you finally gave me the science behind why that doesn't work for me, because that's what I've always tried to do. It doesn't work. And I think you explained, hopefully you can explain this better, that for high neurotics, me, someone who gets highly anxious, I am so anxious when I'm not doing my email, and I'm so anxious during the hour that I'm batching that it's actually not worth trying to batch it. Did I get that science right? Is that why that doesn't work?
Yep, that's exactly right. You can use, they use thermal cameras so they could directly measure the stress response. They also use heart rate variability monitors. The higher you scored on the neuroticism scale and the Big Five psychological inventory, the more stress they could just directly pick up when they asked you to experiment with batching. But more importantly, it's what I keep coming back to. This is the big inversion I'm trying to make with this book. You can't solve these problems with just your habits. This is not a problem about you having bad email habits. It's a problem of the underlying way that we have implicitly agreed to collaborate. The hive mind necessitates constant email checking. Any type of habit or norm or expectation that gets you away from constant email checking will make you worse at your job and hurt your organization if the hive mind is how you organize. We have to replace underneath the inbox our rules, our systems, our guidelines for how we actually collaborate. How do we communicate about this type of work? Where does that communication happen? When does that happen? Where is the information? Where do I get that information? It can't just be, I'll grab you on Slack and we'll rock and roll.
Okay, so we are slowly, as my organization, we're a small team, we are slowly trying to turn off our hive mind. We're trying to transition by using the book. I highly recommend you go through each and every step in the book, because Cal actually walks you through how to do that personally, but also with an entire team. But what I want to ask you, Cal, is right now, what are some baby steps that people can take if they're trying to begin to swallow and operate under this new principle? Are there some baby steps they can start with?
Well, the very first step is defining your job. And by defining your job, you actually have to write down, these are the things I do again and again. I call them processes in the book. We can call them whatever you want. You have to have them written down somewhere. And like the easiest way to do this is to actually use your inbox. So take a day, every email message that you're going to send, say, what is the underlying sort of process this email is trying to push forward? Is it the dealing with client question process? Is it the getting the videos ready for production process? Whatever. One day of emails, you do this exercise, you write down all the different processes you're involved with. Once you see them all, that's the first step, right? Now, most of these processes you're probably implementing with the hyperactive hive mind right now. So if you want to get started, look for the low-hanging fruit. Well, let me just find one thing here. One thing I repeatedly come back to, and right now I just kind of do it with messages. And let me just put in a different system here that reduces those unscheduled messages. And it might be as simple as, I'm going to use Calendly. to set up these sort of frequent meetings we have with our client instead of doing back and forth email. Hey, that's a process that happens, the meeting setup process. You've changed the hive mind with something that generates less messages. Just do a few low-hanging fruit. And it
Mm.
just teaches you, oh, there's alternatives to the hive mind. And when you take the time to switch to these alternatives and different processes, you feel a little bit of pressure decrease, a little bit more pressure decrease. The number of urgent messages that need your response start to go down. And that's how you get that rock starting to roll down the mountain, starting to pick up that momentum.
Okay, so I love that. It actually took us 3 days. We did it over as a team. We set up a spreadsheet where we wrote down every single person's sort of the main projects and tasks that were happening. And we looked at our email over the course of 3 days. And finally, we felt like, yes, this is our spreadsheet of what everyone does in the team. So two other things I thought were so immediately helpful that I implemented them right away. The first is an end of day list and an end of week list. We use Asana. You talk about Trello a lot in the book. And so immediately I created, here's an email that I send all the time to my assistant. Hey, are you going to get that done by the end of the day? Or, hey, by the end of the day, could you please do this? Or, hey, have you called that person yet? It was endless check-in emails on either chat or email. So I was like, okay, no more. So I created in our Asana, we both have end of day and end of week. And that way, if I know that something has to be done by the end of the day, I just add it to that. And when she's ready, she can go check it, which has saved us so much back and forth. So I love that. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So end of day, end of week. The second thing that we immediately implemented was this idea of a sprint. So you talk about this actually at the end of the book, and I was like, oh, this is it. Could you explain the idea of a sprint on a project versus the way it's normally done?
Yeah, so it comes out of software, but it was adapted to other types of efforts. This adaptation actually happened at Google, where they were seeing sprints originally showed up in agile project management methodologies for software, but you can do it for anything. And the idea here is that, like, essentially you're getting together a group of people to work on one thing. And in a structured manner, they give that thing their full attention until it's done, which is very common in software development, but very uncommon in hyperactive hive mind type organizations and other types of work, because the assumption is I have to be tending to hive mind constantly while doing something else. So it's very powerful to say, we're doing a sprint on this, which means no one can reach us. This is all we're doing until it's done. It's this sort of sequentiality of do this until you're done, then move on to the next thing, which is a really good fit with our brain. We should probably have more of this. This is all the type of stuff that's hard, though, when just everything is being worked out informally and there's all these messages waiting for you.
Okay, so in addition to that task list that you're going to make, I also want you to think about finishable projects. So this is what we did is I realized, there's a couple projects that we have that will have an end date, and they're tricky. These ones get you. Because there's an end date, we don't set up a system for it, right? We say, oh, I just have this project or this report or this book or this client. I'm not going to set up a whole system for it because it'll be over by the end of the month or the end of the year. That's what gets you. So we made a list of our finishable projects and we scheduled in sprints. So for example, working on a new facial expression software, and that requires a lot of back and forth. So what was happening is every day it was, hey, do you have those photos? Hey, have you edited those photos? Hey, do those photos get edited and also added to the videos? Hey, Vanessa, have you finished the curriculum? I mean, these chains of 15 different emails. And so I realized we have to set aside 2 days where we're all in the same room and we're all actually working on this at the same time so that you can just turn to the person and ask. That's what, and we got it done in 2 days. So I wanted to encourage you that if you have finishable projects, consider setting aside a couple of mornings or a couple of sprint days where you actually work on it all at the same time and there's no email, they're not doing anything else, you're just working on that together. It is a game changer. Are you doing any sprints right now, Cal?
Well, I mean, a lot of my life is sprints because I write articles, I do academic articles, I do book chapters, and then a lot of people, might get frustrated because, look, I don't touch my inbox. So I'll go a couple days where I'm just working on something, and then I'll come back to my inbox and see what's going on. So I think sprints are a really good idea. And when you don't do sprints, even just having this notion of, first of all the information about who's working on what, how's it going, and what they need needs to be in a place that's not an inbox. Asana can do this, Trello can do this, Flow can do this, Docs, just shared Docs can do this, shared spreadsheets can do this. So many things that can do this, right? There's so many technologies that can do this. And then you just need some sort of structured way to very efficiently deal with the things that come up or are complicated, or to make a plan for who's working on what. You need these moments of real-time interaction. But if you have, for example, a highly structured twice a week status meeting where we're all looking at the same doc. We see here's what's going on, here's who's working on what, here's who needs what. We do very quick coordination. Like, okay, here's what I want to do for the rest of this week. I'm going to need the photos from you. I'm going to need this from you. Let's write this in the doc so we all see who's committed to doing what. Great. We'll talk again in 3 days. It'll be a 20-minute conversation. And over those 3 days, I know what I'm doing. You know what you're doing. You know what you need to give to me. It's written down in black and white, so you can't just ignore it. 0 emails need to be sent. These type of things make such a difference. You cannot be storing and organizing information in an inbox. Email is great for broadcasting information. It's terrible for interacting. So you should not also be making decisions. You should not be having conversations. None of this should be happening over these tools.
Okay. Amen, first of all. And I have a personal challenge that we're going to be doing after this video, Cal. I don't know if you know how many steps go into making these videos for you. Probably almost 50 or 60 steps just for one video. And it's all done over email. And so with this video, this is going to be the first one that you are watching that we are actually transferring all over to an email list coordination. And so with that, I want to ask one more question, Cal, which is my team and myself, we're going on an email diet. I don't know if that's the word that you would use, but we're trying to go email free, like gluten free. We're trying to just slowly wean ourselves off of it. If people at home are watching and they're inspired to start this email diet, is there any just words of inspiration or motivation that you'd give them other than please buy the book? We'll link to it all in the show notes. Is there anything else you would give them as they go off on this email diet journey?
I mean, the main piece of advice I give people is that the key here, it's not so much about changing how much you use email or your habits, it's replacing these underlying workflows. And I think it gives people a lot of hope because a lot of people, and maybe diet's a good analogy here, a lot of people have a lot of mixed success, failed experiments of just, I'm going to inbox 0, or I'm going to check my email less often, or I'm going to batch, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You end up back where you were before. Once you have this insight of, no, the key is to replace the underlying things creating these emails in the first place with other things that don't create those emails. That switch is very inspiring. You just change a couple of processes and you'll see that momentum going. You'll get a head of steam behind it. This hyperactive hive mind is not synonymous with work. The fact that you hate it is not unusual to you. You are not somehow being obstinate in the face of inevitable technologies. This is a stupid way to work. We are 100% going to move past it. Work is going to be much better. It's going to be much more productive. People are going to be much more happier. Things are going to be much more sustainable. This world is coming. You can be a part of it. You can be out ahead of this trend if you want to really get these ideas into progress right now, which I hope you do. But even if you don't, your organization is going to do this eventually anyway. So help is on the way. This once every 6-minute inbox checking is something we are going to look back at. Like when we used to have the horse buggies in the street and we had to go along with the manure shovels. It's not some peak of high techness, but just a moment of time that was a little bit messy that we're going to get past.
Okay. You heard it here first, my friends. No more horse and buggy emails. We're going to start to replace this email with systems that actually work for us. If you are checking your email every 6 minutes or more, you are not alone. It's I think the block to your productivity and your creative thinking and your teamwork. So I want you to be an evangelist for this. Please check out the book. Also check out Cal's amazing other books. I just love deep work. I love digital minimalism. Be sure you go check out his work. We'll have it all linked below in the show notes. If you liked this video, give it a like. Tell us in the comments your commitment. Are you going to start with some commitment? Are you going to take this email diet with us? Are you going to replace some of those nasty habits, or not habits, those nasty systems with a better system? I'd love to hear from you. Cal, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. I enjoyed it. And I loved hearing about the innovations you are doing within your own team. That's exactly what we need to see more of.
Keep me accountable, friends. YouTube friends, keep me accountable. I'm going to do it. We're going to wean our way off. Thanks so much, everyone. Don't leave forever. I want to stay friends. Be sure to subscribe to my channel right now. I will miss you too much if you don't. If you really want to take our relationship to the next level, become a free insider at scienceofpeople.com, where I will send you my best of the best tips, and I would be honored to be in your inbox.